Lewis, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. I feel like there's somewhat of a mirror image on the other side as an investor, a coach, a full-time entrepreneur. And you've sold 50,000 copies of your book?
Yeah, it's been around for a minute though, but yes, I guess people like it to some degree. Um,
That's a lot.
but it's like
Congratulations.
it's this message that I had in me, and I needed to get it out to the millions. Well, it hasn't been millions yet, but that's my message: is financial freedom of real estate. And you wrote a book as well, and it's about tax advantage investing. What made you, yeah, Section 1031 exchanges. Now, what made you want to write a book? Because as you know, it's a lot of work, and everybody thinks it's like
Sure.
easy to do and it's going to bring in millions, which of course neither are true. But I think you got to have a message inside you. So what made you kind of write that book?
Yeah. I come from a real estate family, even though my dad was a large animal veterinarian. You've heard of Smithfield hams?
Yeah.
Yeah, we lived in Smithfield. Every one of those hogs was once touched by my dad in a very squealy way, if you know what I mean.
Oh no.
Yes, we castrated millions of hogs to become Smithfield hams.
Uh,
And I learned from my parents that when you own real estate, you may not be rich, but you always have access to money when you need it.
that's still a counter, right, Lewis? Because you say real estate is liquid.
Right. It's illiquid, and that's a positive. When things are liquid, there's a run on the bank, and people do the stock market thing, knee jerk react, instead of allow time for things to percolate.
Well, that's a good point. And you're not watching some kind of crypto chart every single day to drive you crazy. That is a good point. But I don't know if you actually
It
answered the
is.
question, Lewis. What made you write the book?
Too many people were making mistakes.
Okay.
And uh, the 1031 exchange sounds daunting, but it's really simple. I mean, it's about the simplest thing you can imagine. If you have appreciated real estate, just real estate, used to be personal property, but Congress took that away in 17 with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. If you own real estate and it appreciates, when the time comes to sell, you structure a 1031 exchange. Real simple. We can talk about how to do it, but we're talking about spending $1,000 with a qualified intermediary, signing an exchange agreement, and then having the ability to defer the tax by acquiring another qualifying replacement property. And qualifying just means another piece of real estate. When I started as a baby tax lawyer in the spring of, where were you in the spring of 84?
Oh my gosh, I think I was in high school. What were you doing?
I was in a closet called the LexisNexis machine,
No.
trying to educate my law firm, national law firm, on what like kind means for real estate, because technically, you exchange property like kind property for property of like kind. And the firm had a client who owned a shopping center and wanted to exchange for an apartment building or a hotel or something, as a long time ago. And the firm was concerned that like kind might mean like kind.
Yeah.
And what that research showed, how many years ago? Is that 40 years ago? That you can 1031 exchange real estate for real estate. Like kind is very broadly defined. And so an apartment building, a shopping center, land, buildings, retail, power center, Starbucks coffee, you name it, whatever it is, if it's real estate, then it is like kind and you can exchange it. And so I wrote the book because too many people were making the mistake of paying the tax
Mm.
and waking up one day and saying, nobody told me. Why didn't somebody tell me that I know taxes are mandatory, but not really. If you own real estate, capital gains taxes are optional because you can defer the tax by doing an exchange. Our people, we have thousands of investors. We've done $8 billion of 1031 exchanges at Capital Square, my firm. And our investors are serial exchangers. They don't exchange Rice Krispies or Cocoa Puffs. They are serial with an S. They are into a series of 1031 exchanges. Every time a property appreciates to the point of being sold, they structure another 1031 exchange. They hire the QI for $1,000 or so, sign an exchange agreement, and exchange into another replacement property. They defer the tax over and over and over and over again until when?
Until when? Yeah, I mean,
Until they drop.
until
And when they drop, all this tax forgiveness, it's tax deferral. It's not tax forgiveness. Each exchange must be followed by another exchange or you pay the tax, but it's within your control as the owner. And when the day comes that we meet our maker, our kids will not buy a Lamborghini, but they could, because the taxes are essentially forgiven at that point.
they
The
are.
basis in the heirs is stepped up to fair market value. And so they can sell that last property without, typically without federal or state income taxes.
I want to get into the mechanics of it here, but I just have a question here. I mean, just in being around and asking, I'm almost interested in real estate investing in other countries. And what I discovered is that, I don't know, no other country in the world has these tax laws that we have in the United States. Why is the tax law so favorable for real estate investors, you think?
I'm in historic Hanover County, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, and those guys love their real estate. And we favor real estate. We're also one of the few countries where home ownership is the norm, right? It's just ingrained in us, maybe because we were colonists. We came over and we had to, carve out the home place out of the wilderness. And I think just it's ingrained in our culture to own real estate. And Congress, in creating the tax code, 1031's been in since 1921. I mean, how long is that?
I don't know.
Over 100 years?
It's something like that. Yeah.
So it's ingrained in us. And yeah.
Either way, obviously, the government is trying to incentivize the behavior that they want us, which is to own and invest in real estate, because obviously housing is very important. I mean, the questions aside, I'm going to simply observe that there are multiple tax advantages, and we're going to talk about them here today in real estate. And I think if you don't know about these, to your point, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. And if you do take advantage of them, like we're going to talk about here, you can build wealth so much faster. Even if the cash on cash return or the appreciation is equal to or even less than other investments, even though in many cases that's not the case, the tax advantages are so incredible that everybody. This is why I think if you study multimillionaires, 25% of their portfolios in real estate, probably because of the tax advantages. And so that's pretty cool. So let's talk about 1031 exchange. So if I'm hearing you correctly, the idea is that you own a piece of property, and you can start with a house with a resident, right? Doesn't have to start with a giant apartment, but you can start with a house. And
most people start with a rent house. It's an investment property, and from there at the end of this discussion, we're going to talk about how that same investor can go from a rent house to an interest in a REIT, a real estate investment trust, that's on the New York Stock Exchange, from the least institutionalized investment to the most institutionalized investment in my 40 years. But we start with a rent house.
Well, let's start it. Let's paint the picture.
When you're young, you work hard, you see opportunity, you buy a rent house. You lease it up, you fix it up, you do all the work yourself. It appreciates. The tenant or somebody else wants to buy it from you. That was me. In '85, I sold that rent house. And on April 15th, I wrote a check for all the profits to the IRS.
Oh.
And I said, I worked really hard and I paid all the profit out in taxes. I'm a damn tax lawyer. Why did I do that? And the answer is never again. So since then, it's all been 1031 exchanges. Houses, plain old regular houses are kind of the core. That's where people, cut their teeth on real estate. Also, when you're younger, you have the time. And you can figure out how to handle a piece of sheetrock and, how to pound nails and fix things on your own. You don't have to, spend $100 an hour for everybody to do things for you. As you get older, it's harder because now you have kids, you have a career, you get busy. But in the beginning, it's usually a rent house or 2 or 3 or 4, and then you exchange those for a 4-unit, a 12-unit, an apartment building. And then you wake up and you're a partner in a law firm and you say, I can't manage property anymore. My spouse was collecting rent checks, 6 months pregnant, in not the great, in a perfectly nice neighborhood, but it's just at some point you say, we're looking for something more passive. For us, that was about 1990. I got the call from California syndicators. That's an ugly word. Now we call ourselves sponsors, but a syndicator called me and said, "You're a tax lawyer. I'll bet you can take a big building, a big, beautiful building, investment grade, too big for anybody to own on their own, and break it down into undivided ownership so your 1031 exchange investors can own a piece." And we did that in 1990. We called it tenants in common after the English common law ownership structure. I went to Oxford University, so I applied a little legal history. My local law professor said, I said, "What's the greatest law school in the world?" And he said, "Oxford." And I said, "I don't want to go to Mississippi." And he said, "You're an idiot." And then he wrote a letter so I could go to Oxford. I went to Wadham College in Oxford. And in 1990, we stole the English common law and created a structure called tenants in common. I did it with Daryl Steinhaus where was Daryl? Definitely in California, in Southern California. He was Pasco's lawyer. If you've heard of Pasco, they're one of the big original sponsors. I was Triple Net's lawyer. We were like Coke and Pepsi, Ford and Chevy. We were the duo. But Daryl got me started with good documents, and I made them much friendlier. And we were off and had an industry where you could 1031 exchange into a percentage of $100 million building, investment grade, the best property managers, best tenants, best everything. And that was a big shift from first the rent house, but over time you roll that up. But as you get older, you get to the point where you need a passive ownership, and that's what the tenants in common was.
Well, I thank you. We simply use the tools and the words that you guys created, and we take them for granted, like the air we breathe. Well, that's pretty cool, Louis, because we take for granted the things that you created back then, and we use the terms tenants in common and the things that you've done, and we just use them and take them for granted, and so. Yes. It's amazing, and you are right. I mean, this is one thing because we are in a multifamily space, and we present this to our investors as well. Hey, if you want to do something passive, you don't have to stop 1031 exchanging. You can do the same thing, and it's a little more complex and a little bit more cost, a little bit more money, but you're saving so many taxes, and now you don't actually have to be an active investor. And so, this is an amazing way to use 1031 exchanges.
Absolutely, and that business grew and grew and grew. Over the years, we've changed our structure to the Delaware Statutory Trust. I know this all sounds foreign to people, but basically the ticks were fairly active. There was a lot of voting that was required, and it turned out that investors were not really well suited to making difficult decisions. There was always, I shouldn't say this because I'm a grandpa, but there was always a granny in tennis shoes on a cruise. You need unanimous consent. One of our colleagues had a building with a tenant issue, big building, big tenant issue, worked hard and fixed the problem. And one granny in tennis shoes wouldn't consent, and the building was lost to the lender, and all the investors lost all of their money. And so we said, never, never, ever again. In 2012, a bunch of us guys and gals who had all worked together in different companies came together as Capital Square in Richmond, Virginia. And we said, we're going to use the Delaware Statutory Trust where the sponsor makes the key decisions and not have that risk that we had with the tenants in common. And it's worked out phenomenally. We've done $8 billion, 170 plus properties. And for the most part, it's worked out as planned. It is real estate. And not to be negative, but in the great financial crisis in 2008, the tenant in common structure was limited to 35 investment slots. And if we had a $35 million equity requirement, guess how much each investor is putting up?
A lot.
Basically, investors were putting all their eggs in one basket. When that basket was dropped because suburban office buildings or whatever didn't do so well in 2008 to 12, there was suffering and loss. And so when we came together as Capital Square, we said, we're going to use the DST. We're going to have very low investment minimums to encourage broad diversification, broad, 3 to 5 programs at any given time. If you're an exchanger with debt, you have to have equal or greater debt. So most of the programs have debt. But like the lady in Beverly Hills who called and yelled at me and said, I don't want no stinking debt, young man. We said, okay, don't. We have programs with no debt, all cash. And we have programs with high leverage for people who need, who need a larger amount of debt. Typically, they've lost money, which makes their leverage go up if you do the math.
Let's talk about DSTs because it's something we don't really talk about. I think a lot of people have at least heard of 1031 exchange and kind of sort of know how to use it. But the DST, is it basically an equivalent of 1031? Is it for somebody else? In other words, talk about who the DST is for, and then we'll get into more of the details.
The DST is for someone doing a 1031 exchange.
Anyone. So it's literally another option.
It's just the structure. It's just a box. Mm-hmm. It's the box that has a piece of real estate in it. If you check all these little boxes, the IRS tells you you've done a good 1031 exchange. And if you buy from Capital Square, you get a tax opinion that says it should qualify for 1031. So it's just basically a check the box on how to do things properly.
So it's anyone doing a 1031 could also do a DST. So it must be,
yes,
it must be extremely expensive or have some huge negative.
There's an angle for regular folk. Most people who are in DSTs are exchangers. But if you use cash to invest in a DST, when the time comes to sell, let's say you put 100,000 in and it grows to 150,000, you can 1031 exchange out of your DST. Now, it's the only entity where you can 1031 exchange out of the equity position. Otherwise, it's the ownership. So if you own an LLC, most people have their real estate in an LLC nowadays, right? And it's the AB LLC. It's not A and B doing the exchange, it's the LLC doing the exchange. So, if A and B want to go their separate ways, it can be difficult. But if you invest in a DST, you can 1031 exchange that beneficial interest, not the whole building, not the DST as an entity, but your share. And it's the only entity that has that flexibility.
Well, it sounds like there's only advantages of doing the DST. Why are we still doing a 1031 exchange? Is it because simple people don't know about it?
It's still a 1031 exchange.
Oh, it is a type of 1031 exchange. Gotcha.
It's just the wrapper. It's the way for multiple people to own a single property in a 1031 exchange. It's an alternative to the TIC.
To the TIC.
It doesn't suck your blood.
yeah, that's right. Okay, so it's still 1031 exchange. It's just a structure within the 1031 exchange is done through a DST.
Right.
And the QI, the qualified intermediary, handles that. You guys handle that. Handle that. So is there any? So let me ask you this: is there any reason to do a traditional TIC anymore?
No. TICs are obsolete.
TICs are obsolete.
They are for syndication with multiple people. Some folks will use a TIC among related parties if they're buying a building within related companies or family members. They might want to use a TIC, but basically they are deader than Elvis.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Breaks my heart. We mastered them and knew everything there was to know about them, but the DST just works better for everybody. It's a very simple solution. It's passive. It's confidential. Mm. In the TIC days, your name might end up in an agreement in the land records so your neighbors know you're rich. In the DST world, it's passive. It's confidential. There's no liability. If there's a slip and fall on the property, you're not liable. Your assets aren't liable. The sheriff's not going to ever come knocking. And remember, most exchangers who have debt on their relinquished property have to have debt on their replacement property. You're not personally liable for that debt. The property is liable for the debt. It's non-recourse debt. You don't even have to fill out a financial statement for the lender.
So that's pretty cool. DST is a better alternative than the TIC, so that's pretty cool. Now, in your
it is, and the IRS gave it to us for free.
That's right.
The IRS is very supportive of 1031. Mm. There are literally hundreds of private and published rulings so that people don't make inadvertent mistakes. And that's really why part of the book is to give shaggy dog stories, we call them down south, so that people don't make mistakes. One of my favorite early exchangers way back in the early 90s was Willie in Stafford County. Remember Stafford?
Hmm.
Yeah, well, it's not country anymore. Willie had 12 acres on Mine Road. And whenever my law firm's developers would show up, he'd take out a shotgun and would chase them away. And they asked me to go visit with Willie. And I asked them, was I going to get shot? And said, no, tell him you're a hick from Smithfield, Virginia, and drink iced tea with Willie. And I approached him and looked a little bit scared. And Willie said, sit down, boy. And I said, Willie, I'm looking around and I'm not really seeing $12 million, you know? And he said, boy, I'll die before I pay $1 million in taxes. And I said, Willie, you're never going to pay the taxes. We're going to do a 1031 exchange and defer the taxes. And when you pass, your heirs will get a step up in basis and they won't even pay the taxes. And you know what he said? Where's that contract?
Yeah, it's a great story. I mean, you are right. A lot of people don't sell because they have so much equity in a property and they don't want to pay the taxes, which of course is silly. That is a great story, and a lot of people don't know about 1031 exchanges. Certainly not the DSTs. So that's pretty cool. Now, you mentioned earlier going all the way from a rental property to a REIT. In your book, you talk something about an UPREIT, which I was going to pronounce as upright, but I think it's probably an UPREIT.
UPREIT.
What is that?
Now we're jumping into the deep end of the pool. REITs were created way back when, I think might have been in the Nixon administration. Historically, only rich people could own investment grade real estate, funds and private equity and Wall Street and all the rich people. And Congress said, you know, everybody should be able to own a little piece of the rock. And so they created a special flavor of real estate company that's tax favored. And it's designed for masses, for lots of people to be able to pool their money to invest in real estate with tax benefits. That's for regular cash. That's not for 1031 money. But typically REITs own all of their real estate in a partnership. Don't want to get too bogged down in things, but partnership taxation is much more favorable than anything else. It just gives you more flexibility and a lot more room to maneuver. And so we have a REIT, and on top of it is an operating partnership, just a partnership. That's where it owns its real estate. And the angle is, we start with a rent house and we sell it and do an exchange, and we end up with a 12 unit, and then we end up with a lot of property, and then we're older and don't want to do the work anymore because we're too busy with our lives. We exchange into a TIC if it was 20 years ago, or into a DST. We're very happy with that, but we realize at Capital Square, we realize that lots of investors get tired of exchanging. Now, we love exchanging. I was a QI, I was a qualified intermediary. I loved making $1,000 every time somebody did an exchange. It worked great. But we have observed that as you get closer to dropping, you get tired of swapping. So as investors get older and we say, okay, you're in a single property, a God forbid could happen. And we have 170 properties in 13 years. One property got washed out by the hurricane from 2 years ago. Now it has loss of rents insurance and full replacement cost insurance, and it'll be rebuilt. But if that were your only asset, it would be very unfortunate. And so we have started a program where the DST investors, when their property matures, at the end of the holding period, the property is appreciated. We get an MAI appraisal, and we say to the investor, your 100,000 is worth 200,000. You have a choice. You can go into the operating partnership, you can take cash with your QI and do an exchange, or you can cash out and pay the tax, or if you're deceased, not pay the tax. And most of Capital Square's investors have said, well, tell me about this operating partnership. And we say, well, you now would own a little piece of lots of properties. Come hell or high water, your distributions are very safe and very secure. You are diversified in a way that you really can't be in the DST. And so older investors who get tired of the process, they have to find a new property. They have 45 days to make a selection, and it's hard. And some people think the property they own is better than what they can buy. And some of these properties have assumable loans that are 2 or 3% interest rate that you definitely can't get today. So many of Capital Square's investors said, give us a permanent solution. 1031 is not permanent. Every time you sell, you have to do another exchange. It's no big deal for me. I'm in the exchange business, but if I were 70 or 80 years old, it would stress me out. And so those investors take their equity, they go into the operating partnership of the REIT. It's paired with the REIT. So if the REIT pays 5.5%, 5%, they get 5.5%, 5% on their equity. REIT is a big time operation. It has a board of directors that's independent. I'm on the board, but I don't control the decision. That gives investors comfort that the decisions will be made for their best interest, not necessarily the manager sponsor's best interest. And you can do more with property in a REIT. In the DST, we're very limited in what we can do. We cannot modify the financing. We cannot change the financing. We can't add capital. We can't have a capital call. Nobody wants a capital call. But let's say by adding $10,000 per apartment, we could make a 20, 30% return. Unless there's cash somewhere, you can't do it. So the REIT doesn't have that limitation. It can refinance. It can add financing. It can do supplemental loans with Fannie Mae. It can use its capital to turn apartments and fix kitchens. And it just provides a lot more benefits along with audited financials from Ernst & Young, the gold standard. So for a lot of investors, the 1031 treadmill was great when they were young. They loved it. They made a lot of equity. They built up millions of dollars of equity. They can't sell and cash out because of 1031. If they stay in the 1031 revolving door, every 5, 7, 10 years, they're going to have to take action. But if they go into the operating partnership, they can park there for life. They will have tax deferral forever. And when they pass away, the heirs get a step up in basis. At that point, they can swap their OP units for stock. If the REIT trades, they can sell it on the New York Stock Exchange and have liquidity the next day.
That's
It's a
interesting.
magical thing from a red house to the New York Stock Exchange.
That's fantastic, Louis. I've never heard of that before. I've never heard it before that because as you're right, one of the biggest problems with 1031 changes typically is that the investor has to stay active. And a lot of people don't want to be active. And there's really no way out of that unless they invest in the syndication like we talked about through now a DST. But even that becomes tedious at one point. So is it UPREIT?
UPREIT.
UPREIT is
like umbrella partnership.
Yeah, I love it.
It's on the top.
I love it.
It's on the top. And the sponsors are some of the best real estate companies in the nation. And they're buying some of the best properties in the best markets with the best tenants, with the economies of scale. If you have billions of dollars of property, you get better pricing.
Yeah.
Everything is better, lower cost, better quality. It just works better.
So there's a lot to learn here, but it's worthwhile to learn because, like you said, you can build up so much wealth so much faster by using some of these tax advantage strategies. So tell everyone where can people find your book, number one, and how can people connect with you?
The book is available anywhere that books are sold. Amazon and other places. It's called Section 1031 Exchanges, How to Swap Till You Drop. Building family wealth while minimizing taxes. All the proceeds go to the Children's Hospital of Richmond, one of our favorite charities. We were part of building a Wonder Tower where all the specialties that a child could need are located in one tower. They had 4,000 emergency room visits last time we were there talking with the staff. 4,000 kids were treated as of this spring, and now we're into the fall, so maybe by now it's 6,000 or so. And there can't be a better cause than helping the children. So it's about $12. Think of it as a donation to the Children's Hospital of Richmond. Read the shaggy dog stories. We call them that down south. That's what Willie was, a shaggy dog story. I learned a lot from regular folks and put the stories in the book to make it entertaining.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, it's definitely worthwhile. Check out your book and your stories and make that $12 donation to a worthy cause. So thanks so much, Louis. Great hanging out here today. It's
wonderful. I appreciate it. I'm glad you didn't dress for me. I I didn't realize we were video. I have a face for radio, and I threw a clean shirt on at least, but it doesn't say freedom. What does your shirt say?
Yeah, it says freedom. This is my uniform. See?
That is wonderful. Tell me about some of the mistakes you've encountered when it comes to taxes.
Well, I mean, I think mistake number one, that's a great question, Louis. Mistake number one is that people don't get a CPA that knows real estate. Number one, everybody has a CPA, but real estate is quite a bit different, and people are resistant to making that change because their CPA tells them that there is no advantage, or they give them wrong advice, and they've been with them for years, and so they never switch, and they lose out on a lot of the things that you're talking about here. So I think in the tax world, that's probably the number one mistake I see people make. How about you?
Paying the taxes.
Yeah, yeah, because they have a bad CPA.
It does. We have one workaround. Somebody makes a mistake. They don't hire the QI, they cash out and receive the money. They can still invest in a qualified opportunity zone fund, a QOZ. You can defer any capital gain by reinvesting the gain in a qualified opportunity zone fund. And that's another way. The beauty of the QOZ is if you have investors in stocks and bonds, Bitcoin, crypto, any capital gain, you can defer. And if you hold the investment for 10 years, exclude the taxes. The beauty of the OZ is it applies to any asset. If you have real estate, 1031 is logical. If you blew your exchange, you have 180 days to reinvest in a qualified opportunity zone fund. If you have stocks and bonds and businesses and equipment, you could never, well, at one time you could do lots of 1031 exchanges, but Congress changed that years ago. And now you have the opportunity zone fund. If you hold your investment in the fund for 10 years, the tax is forgiven and you don't have to die to get it. So who wouldn't love that?
That is fantastic. Tell us really, really quickly about your company, Capital Square, and what you guys do.
Yes. Capital Square is a specialized investment manager. We specialize in creating investments that have exceptional tax benefits. And so we have Delaware statutory trusts for people doing 1031 exchanges who want to defer the tax. We've done 170 some $8 billion of those properties more. We've done more 1031 exchanges than Doan has pills, as they say down south. And that's a very big business for us. And it's been very profitable for the investors who used to mostly 1031 exchange over and over again every time we sell a property. But recently, 60 or 70% of the investors are opting for the operating partnership in the REIT.
Nice.
And we have opportunity zone funds where we buy a lot in a qualified opportunity zone. We build a big, beautiful building, we finance it, and in 10 years after leasing it up, we sell it and the taxes will be forgiven. We're on our 9th one of those, near $1 billion of development. Believe it or not, I'm what they call a damn lawyer, but we have our in-house development team and they build the most beautiful buildings that are winning awards all over the Southeast. And we have regular old development funds for people who have just regular cash and want to make a larger, quicker return by investing in a project. And then last but not least, you have the REIT, Housing Trust. We're bullish on housing. So it's any form of housing, Class A or B, multifamily, could be manufactured housing, could be built for rent, but any sort of housing in the Southeast, the same kind of properties as the DSTs, because many of the DSTs are ending up in the REIT. It's very stable. It generates a stable cash flow and appreciation with tax benefits, and it's overseen by an independent board, and Ernst & Young audits the financials. So it's heading towards the New York Stock Exchange. It's in that direction.
Nice. That's exciting. That really is exciting. So everyone, check out Lewis's book.
Very exciting. That's why I'm so tired. It's so much work keeping up with all these programs. I don't know how I'm going to stay awake through this podcast.
Keeps you young, though. Keeps you young. Look at that. Still having some adventure. I love it, Lewis. It was really great hanging out with you.
I appreciate it. You've done a wonderful job, and I'm going to go read your book, and I enjoy the podcasts. syndications, investor, coach, mentor. Wow. You've done a wonderful job. Thanks for the opportunity.
Louis, thanks so much.